Robbin, my good dear friend, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great.
Have you heard from Melanie yet from Live More?
I don't think so, but I also haven't. I've had a very casual relationship with my email this morning. So,
Yeah, but I talked to her on, I mentioned you again on Monday
okay.
when we went
Okay.
back and forth. So, I mean,
Things
there's
happen.
other- yeah, well, and I
Mhm.
mean, they're lost, right? There's other
Yeah,
places. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
If it works out, it works out. If not, no worries. Yeah, I've been a little distracted the last couple of days because my plum tree has exploded, and so it's time to make jam.
Just kidding. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
No, it
Oh,
literally blew up. Yeah.
yeah, really?
Yeah, it literally like the heat was too much for. No, I'm kidding. It's time to harvest, and there's a lot of them this year.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
cool. That's cool.
it is
Currently where I am, it smells like a campfire because my province is on fire.
on fire.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
because global warming's a myth.
Well, that's not real.
Really started.
That's not real.
No,
It's
you know,
just,
you
I'm
might.
looking off to the side and I'm writing something down, but I'm listening. So please just know that. I
That's
just
good.
want to make notes of what I'm talking about. So continue.
No problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
You might want to pan your camera to your left a little bit because I can see half your book. And I think it would be cool if my viewers could see your entire book. There we go. Right there.
Why don't I move this over?
Below that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I know I move it a little like from time to time.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, how do you want to do it? How do you want to start? Do you
So-
want to just like
Yeah. I'll do a little intro real quick, and then we'll just have a conversation. And we're going to
Okay.
talk. You have so much to give. And we're going to kind of focus on being that safe space, because so many of my other guests have talked about how your kid's first line of defense is knowing they can come to you, and that's something that we often break.
that's so great. If you say that, then yeah, I can
Yeah.
jump on and say like so much about that. It's so important.
Sounds great.
Okay.
All righty. So what we'll do is we'll just do a moment of silence, so I know where to cut the editing. And
Okay.
we'll go
Are
from
you
there.
okay if I drink coffee while we talk?
Absolutely. You think there's water in this? You do not understand my Fridays.
You think
No,
there's coffee
that
in
is
this?
totally
No.
water. It totally is water.
Yeah, it's totally coffee. Yeah, I know.
Outstanding. All righty. So, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Safest Family on the Block. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is my good friend, Robbin McManne. Robbin McManne.
McCann. Same diff.
Exactly. My good friend, Robbin McManne. Robbin, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here. I just love everything you stand for, Jason. I love all of your information. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I really appreciate it. One thing I really also appreciate is I'm consistently amazed by the quality of guests who are willing to come on the show. People with resumes longer than my attitude problem, right? You actually sent me 2 resumes, a long one and one short enough to read. You're the first one to do that.
Oh.
So this is the abridged and expurgated version of Robbin's extensive bio. Robbin is a certified parent coach, an author, podcaster, and speaker. Robbin's a parenting expert and consultant for the international personal development app Live More. Robbin also sits on the expert panel for Newsweek magazine, where she contributes to and writes articles related to parenting for the publication. In her work with parents from all over the world, she helps them build more connection and find more joy and cooperation to their parenting. Robbin's work focuses on building and strengthening the parent-child relationship so that children grow up with resilience, confidence, and strong emotional intelligence. She works with parents to help them understand their own emotions and frustrations in parenting so they can help build their children's sense of self without losing themselves in the process. And she is the author of The Yelling Cure, which you will see there. I think that'll end up on the right-hand side of the screen when the mirroring gets all fixed around. But anyway, it's right there. It's the blue thing in the background. It's a fabulous book that sold more than 300,000 copies. So Robbin's impressive, and I'm really glad to have you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much. That's so great. I am so happy to do the work that I do. And it is, it's the happiest I've ever been doing this kind of work to help parents, because I used to be a really angry mom. It's not like I came to this being perfect and I had it all figured out. So, let me tell you, it came out of a lot of pain and a lot of struggle. And I don't have typical kids. And I think it's hard enough to raise a typical child with zero help or really information on what's going on with our kids. And then to have kids with extra challenges, oh boy, you become an expert in those areas because you have no choice as a parent, and that's overwhelming.
Absolutely is. And of course, then you get the fact that we are deeply emotionally invested in our kids, and it's very hard to see just beyond the frustration of having a teenager look in the eye and telling you you ruined their life or to go to hell, but just that every time there's a contretemps, a problem, there's that little shoulder devil telling you you're a bad parent. You're screwing this up. You're screwing up the most important thing you've ever done. And that's on top of everything else can make it a very emotional and fraught experience.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say, I say this all the time because it bears repeating. When you look at how long we study for our careers, how long we, study for, how long we go to university for and all that. And I would argue, of course, that being a parent and raising a child is the most important job we do, period. And where's the training? Where's the understanding? Where's the learning about brain science, developmental stages, about what is appropriate to expect of your child and what isn't? And that's where we get stuck. And what I know is, and you're coming at this as from a dad, and you've got that little, jerk on your shoulder saying you're a bad person and all this stuff. But as women, as moms, we've been trained all of our lives. I mean, what is one of the first things we get is a little baby dolly, and we are told we're going to be moms, but nobody shows us how. And then because we care so much, we are so emotionally invested in our kids, like you say, we feel so ashamed that we are struggling and we don't want people to know. And then we also feel like, well, I shouldn't need help because, Barbara down the street doesn't seem to need any help. But what we don't know is Barbara is crying herself to sleep too, because all the posts she has on Facebook are crap. That's just the highlights, not all the chaos it took to get those posts, So we need to come together and recognize that this is so hard. And there is a way through too. And it just takes a little bit of learning, and it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're a failure at all. And that's what we tell ourselves, and we shouldn't.
I absolutely agree. I liked what you said about how you get a college education or a trade school education if you're going into your profession, especially since one of the advantages of formal education, and there's a lot going on in culture right now about maybe we leaned a little too hard into that. But one of the real advantages of it is that by the time you finish a formal education, you have been shown how to do it by a few dozen people, all of whom have different ideas about how to do it right, which can take a lot of the pressure off of you because you see successful people with different models and gives you access to the things that are going to work best for you, where most of us get trained by exactly one set of parents. If we had a really good best friend down the street, maybe two. And that's another way that we don't get taught, we don't learn, and we end up in these situations where we feel like we're a failure. Maybe we're doing everything right. It was just different from how mom and dad did it.
Well, exactly. And I mean, for most of us, there's this generational parenting pattern that our parents were parented with, that their parents were parented with, and so on, that said, our children are less than. And this generation of kids is like, oh, no, I'm not, and now we're really struggling because it used to be, I mean, I remember my mom said, shut up and go ride your bike, right? It was like, oh, okay, I'll go do that. Like, that doesn't work anymore. So we've got to do it differently. And there's, that's what I'm here to talk about.
And you and I have been brainstorming some topics, and the one that we landed on was about being a safe space for your kid. And I want to preface the conversation with why I think that's so important and so powerful. That is, I've had a lot of guests on this show about how to prevent child abuse, how to identify if somebody in your child's life is grooming them, how to spot signs of cyberbullying, how to find early signs of suicidal ideation, early signs of mental illness, depression, anxiety. And all of them say that, the first line of defense, the best thing we can do is be somebody our kids think they can come to for help.
Yes.
And unfortunately, none of them had any really strong advice on how to be the person that your kids come to for help, because that's a really hard thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so glad I can fill in that blank because, that is exactly what I hear too. So I have a podcast, Parenting Our Future, which you've been on, and we had a great episode together. And here's the thing. What I have learned too is that when it comes to your kids, if they're struggling with their gender identity, their sexual identity, if they're struggling with drugs, alcohol, if there's a relationship that is harmful to them, anything, right? All of those things that you said, the most important part is being there for your child, being your child's safe place. That actually ensures their long-term well-being and yours too. They are infinitely interconnected, right? And if you think about it, when your child is thriving, you feel great. You're thriving. When your child is not, you are not, because you are stuck in fear, in worry, and all of that stuff. And so what we're talking about here is connection with your child, right? And so what does that actually mean, right? To be your child's safe place, it means that you have a relationship with your child that is built on mutual trust and respect, right? You don't say, you need to respect me. You say, I respect you as your own human, with your own wants and needs, with your own personality, your own temperament, right? Which I can get into, how to accept if you don't, and all those things. But that's different, in when I was raised, it was like, you respect me, and nobody respected me, right? So mutual respect, trust, and on communication and understanding. And so that means that when you are communicating with your child, you are not talking down to them. You are like this. You are talking to your child and listening for understanding, listening to their thoughts, their ideas, listening to, what their opinions on things, even if we don't agree, right? We so badly want to correct. We so badly want to teach. We so badly want to influence our kids. And that's a part of it too. But what we do instead is we lecture. And it's much more powerful to solicit ideas than it is to, overwhelm them with talk. And so the whole reason that we do this and we build the relationship, like I've just said, is so that they know that they can come to us no matter what, whether they've done something bad, wrong, they're in trouble. And all we do as parents is we just help them work it out if they want our help. But we are there not to judge, not to criticize, not to make fun of them, not to I told you so all over them. We are just there to say, oh my gosh, you know what? Sometimes things happen and I'm here to help you, right? Not to punish you, take everything that you love away from you. That doesn't teach. That just creates actually disconnection and shows that sometimes my parents will hurt me on purpose, take away the things that I love if I've displeased them. And that's just not the way you want to go forward.
That makes sense. Now, so I'm sure that you've had some pushback on this. And I can feel, my lizard brain pushing back a little bit too about, spare the rod, spoil the child is the term that most folks would use, where as a parent, it is our responsibility to, in some cases, set up an arbitrary system of consequences because your kid otherwise gets away with it. From even the early stages where your little, your 2-year-old is reaching for this hot stove. You're not going to let them touch the hot stove.
Right.
But on the other hand, they should also learn that you don't want to touch hot stoves. That So whether you're trying to do it from that kind of point of view of helping them learn, or from a more, I want to say, traditional point of view of, well, it's parents' job to punish kids sometimes. What do you
Is it?
what's your response to that? Yeah, how do we
Yeah.
what's your
I've had lots of
Yeah,
people that
I'm sure you have.
really want to protect their right to hit their kids. Okay, so okay. I'll instead of going into a big rant about that, what I'll do is I'll answer your question about consequences.
Yeah.
So nothing about what I do or what I teach is about letting your child run the show. It is not about that at all, right? What we do in peaceful parenting, which is really peaceful parenting, conscious parenting, intentional parenting, it's all the same, in my opinion. What it is that we are holding boundaries. Our kids need to have boundaries that within which they can push up against at times, and they are just held back, right? But we don't need to enforce them with, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this to you. Because what happens is our kids focus on what we did, not what they did, and what they could have done differently, and what they should do next time. So instead, so yes, there is a hot stove, that's a big deal, right? That's keeping them safe on a fundamental level, right? And sometimes kids will get burned, hopefully, and I don't say that flippantly, the accidents happen, right, is what I'm trying to say. But to say, don't touch that stove, now go sit in timeout, doesn't make any sense to me. You're not teaching anybody anything. Right? But the other thing that we have to realize, and this is the single biggest piece of information that you need to know and everybody else needs to know, is our kids don't come to us with a fully grown brain. So, and you're talking about your lizard brain. So this is the hand brain model. This is not something I came up with. Dr. Dan Siegel is where I learned it from. And so this is the lizard brain. So this part of the brain, this is the brainstem and the cerebellum. This is where our babies are born, right? So this is lizard brain. This is your lowest brain, which means that it's survival only. It's breathing, circulation, it's hunger, right? That's it. In here is your emotional brain, okay? Kids live here until they're 7 years old, which means they see the world through emotion, they interact with the world through emotion. That's where meltdowns start to happen. That's when we start to go crazy. Can you hear my dog?
I was curious what was dying.
Sorry about that. Somebody is at the door and my dog doesn't like that. Okay, so this is all emotion, right? Which is why they have meltdowns. They have no other way to deal with their feelings, understand them, or articulate them. Then this part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. So behind our eyes here, this is the last part of the brain to grow. And it is what is responsible for empathy, compassion, reasoning, rational thought. Our kids don't have rational thought. They also don't have emotional regulation. This actually helps to regulate the amygdala. It also helps us with being able to forecast consequences. So what I'm trying to say is, if so many people say, well, there's consequences in the world. Yes, there are. Yes. And there are consequences for people who have fully grown brains. That's why we don't, try children as adults, because they do not have the brain. They don't have the brain to be able to think through that, right? And so, by the way, this part of the brain doesn't fully grow, is not fully grown until mid to late 20s. Longer for boys.
I'm in my 40s and I'm not convinced I have all of those things you listed.
I think you do. I think you're pretty good. You wouldn't have a show like this if you didn't. But still, it's important to know. And also, don't we take liberties with our kids that we would never with adults, right? If I said to you, Jason, you were late for our call today, you can't have ice cream for dessert now. Like you wouldn't say that to an adult, right? You meet a friend for coffee, well, you were late, now you can't have that croissant. Sorry. Right? We don't do that. So we can be pretty rough on our kids in unfair ways.
Well, that makes sense. So it sounds like before they reach a certain age, this idea of abstract consequences doesn't even compute. That you're just making things unpleasant without accomplishing anything for next time.
Right. What you're doing is there's the behavior, there's what's driving the behavior underneath, and then you've just laid on a consequence, which is a dressed up way of saying punishment, and you've gotten further away from what's actually driving it. So what we do, what I teach parents to do is go, okay, hang on. First and foremost, and this is all to get us to that place where we are connected, where we are their safe place, because we don't take their behavior personally, right? Which is very easy to do, right? Because sometimes it is personal. Like you said, your kid is telling you, shut up, get away from me, you're a jerk. You know, I've heard it all too. Like my child has said those things to me. And I have two boys. One is more likely to say it than the other. But still, it's not about, you have to look at it as just communication, letting you know that something is off with them and that there is an emotion that isn't validated, or there's an emotion, that isn't validated. There is a need that isn't getting met, or they just don't have the skill to do better yet. So as parents, all we need to do is teach. We just need to teach and be curious, like, whoa, okay, you said that to me kind of in a hurtful way, bud. How come? Why did you talk like that? Or I can see you're really frustrated right now. This is what I heard you say. Am I right? Okay, so if I'm right, if you are feeling that way, how do we work it out? And then, by the way, bud, of course I have boys, so everybody's bud. You know, look, the next time you're feeling this way, instead of calling me the way you did, instead of talking to me the way you did, please remember, I am always on your side. And all you have to do is say, Mom, I need some help. You know, and maybe they can't do that next time. So you just remind them again. It's not like, I already told you this, now get out of my sight. No, it's like, remember, bud, I'm always here for you. You just remind, you teach. If they keep doing it, they don't get it yet. And that's okay. They are still working through it, right? They don't get it yet. So as parents, we just have to be super patient, right? And I always look at parenting on two sides, right? There's our kids and their behavior is always just letting us know it's a need that isn't getting met, a feeling that's unvalidated, or they don't have a skill yet. And on our side as parents, we have to look at why we get so mad, why we get so triggered, right? Usually that's from our own childhood. Usually that's from a place where we were hurt before, and our kids are just bringing those feelings back up, and we're yelling at them, but we're actually yelling at the wrong person, because it's really not our kids. It's just the feeling they bring out in us.
That seems to be something that could create a feedback loop very easily. One thing that my youngest is 11, and he's had some outbursts for most of his life, and I've gotten into the script about, hey buddy, are you mad at me? Is it me you're mad at, or is there a situation you're mad at? But he's not mad at me. He's mad because he doesn't understand the homework, or he's generally anxious because the world is in turmoil right now, and it's everything. There's huge emotions in this little bitty body, and so he's not mad at me, but I'm handy. And then that hits me and triggers something from my childhood, and I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at some conversation I had with my mom when I was 12. So we're both going spiraling each other up, and we're not even mad at each other.
And yes, exactly. And it isn't really until we heal that part of us, right, which takes work and takes time, that we can that our son can come to us and just rage at us, and we just say, I know, yes, I know. It's sometimes the world can be hard to understand. You know, I know that he doesn't know how to understand, deal with, or articulate his feelings, right? Even though he's 11, he has that prefrontal cortex, but he doesn't fully get it yet. And so if you can be that strong parent for him, and you say, I got you, bud, no matter what you do or say to me, I got you, and we'll work it out. You know, I'm not going to let you, call me names and, all that stuff, right? Of course, we have a level and a boundary around the way we talk to each other, right? And those what comes into play there are our personal and family values, right? You know, that we want to share with our kids and so on. There's so much more to it, but for us to say this isn't about me, my kid has got something else going on, and I kind of look at it like this. You did a really good job describing it. And so for me to just reiterate is that I sort of look at it as like, we're all in our own little bubbles of feelings and needs, right? He's having his own feelings and needs right now. He's frustrated with his homework. Maybe he's feeling embarrassed. Maybe he's feeling less than, maybe he's, you know, whatever, feeling stupid, feeling stuck, feeling trapped, all of those things. And it comes out as like all over you, right? But then us, we hear that and we're in our own bubble of feelings and need, and maybe we've had a bad day, maybe somebody said something to you that hurt you, and now your kid is going and doing that too, and you react from that place. Or like you said, you know, I was called stupid, I was called all these, whatever your kid is saying, and again, it's like this, it's miscommunication, right? So we just have to understand it's never personal. And it's not just with your kids. Honestly, when people say, when anybody says something to you, it's always about what they're feeling, right? And so if you can just look at it as it's the situation that needs the help and your child that needs the help, it's just not personal. It's just not personal. And it takes time to really get that, right? Even though sometimes I have to fight my own anxiety, my own feelings that are raising up. I had a conversation with my son the other day where he just came at me and at me and at me and at me and at me. And it was just a misunderstanding, but I had to sit there. I had to sit through it, hold my tongue, breathe, because I wanted to strangle him. To be totally honest, I was not, if I had, I would have chipped away at our relationship, and I don't want that. It's not worth it to me. He's 16, right? I don't want to push him away now.
Now that space you get into, I think every parent of anybody who's old enough to talk has had that, where they're in it, they're going, and they're going to be talking at you or doing or upset for a good 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep.
Because there's a small thing they didn't understand, and they're not even mad about something that actually exists.
Yeah.
And then just overcoming the temptation to interrupt them, so you don't have to spend that 10 minutes in that unpleasant space. But then that interruption also causes them to think you don't respect what they're having to say.
Right. It's like fuel to the fire. Just zip it. Right. And we're so we so want to lecture, right? Because we just want to teach, right? But you know, the other thing is that I talk about that as noise. It's just noise, right? And I always tell the parents that I work with, I'm like, think of yourself as Neo in the Matrix. Like, you are just dodging those bullets. Like, they're not going to hit you. Like, just let them get it out, because when you let your kid get it all out, then you find out what's actually really going on, right? Like you said, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
like your son was like, I'm just upset about the homework.
Yeah. Or often it's about, what is it you're upset about? I think that maybe this is what you're upset about. Now, if you're in a situation where that's time sensitive for whatever reason, you know, you're late to something or whatever, there's a trick from the verbal judo, what's the word, program that works. Verbal judo is made for law enforcement officers dealing with drunk people, right? And the behavioral differences between a drunk adult and a 7-year-old and an angry 7-year-old, there are none, really.
I can see that.
They're tiny drunk adults, but because it's all, you know, it's from a very warrior culture, they call the technique the sword of insertion, right? But it's just a way to interrupt someone without them getting mad at you. And what it is you just kind of say, okay, hold on a second. Before we go any further, I want to make sure I understand what you've told me so far.
Yes.
And then you can interrupt anybody you want who doesn't know the trick. If they know the trick, they kind of get mad at you for using the technique. But by doing that, you can kind of stop the conversation, address it, and especially in those situations where there's a misunderstanding that created it, and then they still feel valued because you're telling them, hey, I I want to make sure I understand so far. And oh, well, hell, buddy, I didn't actually say that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Or,
you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's actually really key. Because if you are going to sit there, so in those moments when you're Neo, I'll have to listen.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest keys to that connection piece with your kids. You have to listen. And like you said, what I said to my son is, okay, what I'm, the other day, literally, I said, well, okay, so what I'm hearing is, you're saying this, this, and this. I got some of it right and I got some of it wrong. He's like, no, I'm not saying, okay, whoa, okay, gotcha. So I really like that. And the other thing too, if I can add to that, is that our kids' brains get stuck too. And so what we can do to unstuck their brains, to unstick their brains, is movement. That'll help them. Like, come on, let's talk about it. Let's just go walk to the backyard. That actually will help them to get unstuck in their brain. Or yeah, you know what, that, okay, like I'd like to talk about that. Here's a bowl of chips for us to eat while or some popcorn or some whatever. So something crunchy, even something to drink, right? To just snap them out of it. That's really helpful too. So just knowing that. But the more you can be, and this is sort of how I, the more you can be this boundary for your child that they can push up against. If they come to you and they push up against you and you're like this, you're a figure of instability for them. And they don't know if they can count on you. You need to be this, which means you don't take things personally, which means that you know them better than they even know themselves, that you can predict things like, well, I knew you would say that, or yeah, I knew you would want that and I already got it ready for you, instead of you always being sort of like catching up to them, right? We've got to put some effort in on the front end to prevent these big outbursts as well, because your child isn't happy yelling and screaming like that. You're not happy being on the receiving end of that. So if you can prevent it, then that's the best way to do it, right? What is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? I think that's right.
Yeah. I mean, you're up there in Canada, so you use the metric system. I'm not sure how you say it up there. A gram of prevention. Gram of prevention's worth a stone. I don't know.
I like how you say I'm in Canada as though it's weird. May I point out that it's just you guys that don't use the metric system. Everybody else does.
No country that uses the metric system has ever sent someone to the moon. I'll just say that.
No. Okay, say that again. Nobody?
No country that uses the metric system has ever sent someone to the moon.
Well, pardon me.
I totally agree with you, by the way. The imperial system is absolute nonsense.
But we talk in it all the time. Yeah, like
yeah. No, it's for viewers who don't know, my wife is Canadian and so is Robin. So I love picking on Canadians. But yeah, Canada
and
really
we're so nice.
Better. You are. You just take it.
We're so nice. We don't mind. We'll actually apologize for it. Like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. We're kind of like that.
Yeah. But we digress. That was, where was that? What was it? There was something very specific about, about the boundaries, about being the wall. My mother was she was a teacher, ended up being somebody who trained and taught teachers, has got a master's degree in education. Nice. And one of the things she used to say that really stuck to me was that children, especially smart children, because her specialty was in tag education, are constantly asking who's in charge.
Yeah.
And if they find out it's them, that's got to be the scariest thing.
Yep, absolutely is. If you can't count on the people who are the big people in your life, holy crap. And so what happens is that actually shows up as behavior, right? It shows up as demanding. It shows up as repeating, like, I want this thing, I want this thing, I want this thing, or, what about my party? What about my party? What about my party? What about my party? Because they know that they can't count on you. They know that sometimes when you say no to something, if they bug you enough, you'll say yes. They know that sometimes when you say yes to something, like here's your phone, that has strings attached and I'm going to take it away from you the second you do something arbitrarily that I don't like, right? So that is really powerful and absolutely true. And you've got to get, that's why, what I said before, predicting and putting putting effort in on the front end of a situation is so much more effective than being stuck with your kid really being in control. So to give you an example, if you don't mind, I have some clients and they have a son that's kind of anxious, just a little higher needs. And they get really frustrated every time they go out because mom will say, come on, let's go. We gotta go. 5-minute warning, 10-minute warning, all that kind of stuff, right? And then finally, when they go, he's like, no, I gotta get my backpack. I gotta get all this stuff. I'm like, why didn't you do that before? How come you can't get that done now? What? We're in the car, we're honking, we're yelling, we're saying, you just always do this. You're gonna make us late. I said, okay, I get it. That's really frustrating. Here's what you're gonna do. Instead of all of that, you are going to say, we're leaving in 5 minutes. I've got your backpack right here. Come on, let's go around and grab all the things that you need, right? Instead of, why do you need all this stuff? And this is ridiculous. And you don't need the blah, blah, blah. None of that. I'm going to be there for you. I know that you need this. I'm just going to accept it. I may not understand why you need all this stuff, but I'm just going to accept it. And I'm going to take you, I'm going to stay with you to make sure you get it. And I'm going to help you with your shoes. I'm going to help you with your jacket. Even if the kid's 11 years old, like here, because they're so distractible, right? I mean, I'm sure your 11-year-old is like that. I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and sometimes I need to do that with them too. Sometimes, shamefully enough, well, not really. My husband has to do that with me. He has to literally put his hands on my shoulders and say, Robbin. And I'm like, oh, yes, because I'm all over the place, right? Because I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about where we have to go and all that kind of stuff, right? So that is just the solution. And it's the same thing, only you are in charge.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that sometimes your husband has to do that with you. Sometimes my wife has to do that with me. Sometimes I have to do that with my wife. And that's one of the things that is, I kind of joke about it, but it's real, especially with my oldest son, who's now 21, about there's certain behaviors that your kids will start showing around 10 that as adults will serve them extremely well. Because it's maybe being a little strategic about how you approach decisions. Maybe it's a degree of autonomy. Maybe it's a healthy disrespect for authority. Maybe it's a level of problem solving that gets around your rules. These are all things that will serve them well as adults. But man, 10 years of parenting, that's going to be a huge pain in the ass. And you kind of want to extinct the behavior. But instead you think, okay, what would I do if an adult did this?
Yeah.
And in your case, it's, hey, honey, pay attention.
That's right.
Are you doing that thing again that you do with love and respect? Right?
Yeah.
Where
and he does it with love when he has, I don't have to do it so much with him, but what I know now after doing this work, of course I want to apply it to my relationship too. And I realize that I am an internal processor and he is external, and I hate it. I hate it so much. I love him so much, but I hate it. So we pack for a trip and I need to, I realize now that I have to sort of draw a line, but I'll be in my head, all the toiletries, all the clothes, what I need for the boys, all this stuff. And he's like, what do you think about this shirt? Should I bring this shirt? Because I think this shirt goes with these pants. And I'm like, oh, it's too much. So I go do it separately. He does it separately. We're all good. Or I can sit there and listen if that's what he needs, right? So you just have to be kind of mature about it too. Recognize it and accept it. Acceptance is huge. Just accept
this is what they need.
This is what you need. And because I love you, I can do this. Right? Because it makes me happier and it makes you happier. And that's what we want. Right? So, yeah.
My lovely and talented wife does the same thing with can check that. But she also, I don't know if this is how your husband is, but the coin flip trick. If you need to make a decision about something that's you're leaning on, you flip a coin and you don't, the coin doesn't choose. You just think about how you feel about the decision on the coin. Because if you got A or B and you flip the coin, it says A and you're like, God damn it. Then you pick B.
Right. Okay.
90% of the time my wife asks me about clothes decisions and things, she's doing that.
Right. Yeah. That's
Should I wear the
right.
blue one or the red one? Oh, I think the blue one, honey. And then she's like, oh, no, not the blue one. And
Right.
sometimes it's hard to not get your feelings hurt. And I think that
That's
applies
right.
directly to the kids, right? And communicating with our kids. And I love what you said about, well, what do you need right now?
Yeah.
And especially when your kid's acting out. And we're kind of circling back to earlier parts of the conversation about my kid's throwing a fit. What does he need? Well, he doesn't need me also escalating. He needs me to figure out why he's upset.
Yeah. He just needs your help.
Yeah.
He just needs your
Now-
help. That's it.
So the next stage is interesting to me, that because we're building this wall, but we're there to help. We're there to, we don't want to confront, we want to connect. That was from some show somewhere. But so say you've got a child that's throwing a tantrum and you're looking to try to identify it, and then they start hitting or throwing things.
Yeah.
How do we handle that inside this framework of not punishing, of not drawing arbitrary consequences?
Yeah. So I've lived that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've worked with clients that have that. You know, I have a child, like my child has lots of stuff going on, and with it comes explosive anger. So I hate to say it like this, but you've missed the cues ahead of time. You have missed what's been going on. And it doesn't mean that that's your fault. Okay. So I don't want you to take the blame or anything like that. It just is, right?
Yeah.
You've missed something because your child has been trying to tell you over and over and over again. And you've either, again, no blame. You've either been distracted. You just aren't listening. You're not interested, whatever. And that's happened. Now, of course, there are people that are going to say, yeah, but it just happened like that. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe, but there might be another.
I'm in the self-defense community, and self-defense instructors, you never get attacked out of the blue as an adult.
Right.
That mugger was scoping you out.
Yeah.
You maybe didn't scan the bar well enough when you went in.
Right.
There are always pre-incident indicators.
Yeah.
For there maybe not always, but vanishingly rare.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And if you're being kind of bluff and jockey like I often am, it's like, okay, if you got here, you screwed up there.
Right.
And you want to avoid blame language, but yeah, if you got here, we screwed up there.
And you go ahead and say it like that. I'm gonna say I can say it like a mama. So here's the thing. So you are, and I can swear, right? So you're in the middle of this show, right? Okay. So I can't on my podcast.
Any parent who pretends swearing doesn't exist, I'm not sure I want to know.
Yeah, I know. I can't swear on my show, so I don't, right? But I do anyway. So
anything you've cleaned off your face because of something your kid did, you can use whatever word you want for on my show.
Okay, great. Okay, good. So here you are. You're in the midst of this massive blowout. So, look, depending on the age of your child, right? Remember, not until they're 7 years old does this start to grow. So therefore, once you're in the thick of it, first, let's talk about the big emotions, okay? And then we'll talk about throwing and kicking and stuff like that. You have to understand that because they don't know what they're feeling. They can't understand it. They can't deal with it, and they cannot articulate it. So Mother Nature is so great. They have given us, a pressure valve, which is a meltdown. And so when we say to our kids, use your words, they have no words. Tell me, if you were freaked out and mad right now, and I said, Jason, just use your words. Just use your words. You tell me to F off, right? Like
I would use words. I would use very strategically.
Right. I'll use some words. All right. I would rage harder. That's when I would start throwing things legitimately. But so what you have to recognize, and I love to use my hands to talk. I need props instead of just my hands, but this is the motion. Okay. So this is a tunnel. Your child is like a train. Your child just needs to go all the way through the tunnel to get to the other side in order to get over it, right? So what do? You just have to say, oh boy, here we are. And you just have to say, yes, you let it all out, baby. You let it all out, and mommy is right here for you. Not a timeout, it's a time in. You know what? If you need me, I am here, babe. It's okay to cry. But as adults, we see this and we're like, oh, hell no, I'm not going through there, right? Or if I do, I'm going to race through. If I do, I'm going to numb myself through it, or I'm going to find another way around it. I'm going to deny that it's there, or I'll bury it, right? So you have to recognize the way we handle our emotions. Our kids' emotions are as big to them as ours are to us. And we've grown to a place where we just don't show our emotions like we did, partly because we have emotional regulation, right? And so when our kids do that, we immediately come from that place of what we're feeling: embarrassed, out of control, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling inconvenienced, right? All of the things. And that's where we react from, right? I mean, if you think about it, that's true, right? It's all the things that we're feeling, like anxious and worried and, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this in front of my mother-in-law, all of that stuff, right? And your kid is just needs to get it all out. So if you can come and be that in charge parent, that safe place, that boundary holding mama, dad, you say, of course you need to cry. You are devastated. You are upset. Come sit with me, baby, or not, you're there. I am here. If you need me, I am here.
Hold on. There we go.
Okay.
That was a call.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. And then here's the thing. So you're going to accept it. And your energy of acceptance is actually what will slow it down. Because sometimes your kid is like, I am so frustrated and you don't even get it. I'm so mad right now and you don't even understand me. And it just makes them rage and rage and rage and rage and rage. But if you were to be that calming, have that calming energy, come from a place of acceptance and love. And look, I know it's hard. I have sat through hour-long meltdowns, more than an hour-long meltdowns. And you just say, of course you need to cry right now. It's okay to feel your feelings, right? That will help. Now, kicking, hitting, usually that's a little bit more for a younger child.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I would get firm and say, okay, hang on. Nope. Like we need to have them somewhere safe. What I would say is ahead of time, you want to talk to your child before that ever happens. And, one of the things I like to do is you can draw it out, depending on how old your child is, draw it out, play, role play, or just play like, hey, let's play school. And, you've got a scenario where your child might have lost it. And like, what can we do instead? Let's talk about it. When this is what it looks like when we have lost our shit. That's what we look like. And that's what our kids are like too, right? So we lose rational thought, which is why we see irrational behavior, right? From, people who you've talked to in your show and that sort of thing. So it's a really difficult situation, but, the best you can do is try to work that out ahead of time. Make sure you and your child is safe. Look, if your child is going to hit another child, you've got to take care of that child first, right? So it's really about prevention. It's really about recognizing that your kiddo is in crisis right now. So if you were to add on punishment, if you were to add on a lecture, none of that is going to help. You just need to stay the course. And then when everybody is calm, whoa, babe. That was big. Holy cow, you're so upset. Let's talk about it, right? And I know that sounds, I don't know if, how people will take, there's so many other steps too, right? To get to that point. But if you have a volatile child, you've got to be even more calm. You've got to be even more centered and rooted in acceptance. And that's not easy. I've lived it. I live it. I know how hard it is, but you can do it. You can do it.
And it sounds like one of the things that you said here, although it's kind of a piece here, piece there, was that one of the concerns about that with a child who gets so angry they hit mommy or they throw a block at their little brother or something, that because that is not, we can't allow that behavior to continue, and we want that behavior not to happen again, we feel the need to enact some kind of punishment.
Yeah.
But after they've calmed down, the fact that they hit mommy and feeling that is a bigger punishment than taking away their Game Boy.
100%. And what we do, if I can just add to it, is that we future parent. We say, oh my God, if you are going to hit me like this, what's going to happen when you're a teenager? Right? What's going to happen when you're an adult? I better correct this now before you're that age. But that doesn't do anything. You can't future parent your child. You can't parent them now for your fears of the future. The future is not here, and we don't know what the future is going to be like anyway. So you can't, all you have is this moment now. And what I can tell you for sure, what I know without a shadow of a doubt, is when you parent your child in this way, the way that I'm describing in this moment, it ensures that they're going to be okay in the future. It ensures their future well-being, like I said earlier, and your future well-being as well. You don't have to worry about that. You don't need a crystal ball, right? So just know that it matters what you do in this moment. The future, I mean, look at us. We're in a friggin' pandemic and we never knew we would be here, and we never knew it would get worse, right? Like there's so much uncertainty. So that's what I have to say about that.
And so we're building that foundation. And a lot of things I'm hearing is, again, letting that shoulder devil just shut up. The one that's telling you you're being a bad parent because this is happening right now. The one that's reminding you what those words coming out of our kid's mouth meant when your parents said them to you. The one that says that you should hold yourself responsible regarding what your 7-year-old is doing for what they might do 6 years from now when they're a teenager. That all of those things those are, I don't know, lies we're telling ourselves. They're reasons to get upset in the moment, and they're hurting us from doing what we need to do in that moment, which is to, there's an adage in the martial arts community that when fists come up, your emotions should go down.
Interesting. Wow. Easier said than done, I bet.
Oh yeah, but it feels like it's the same kind of thing, that when their tempers rise, your temper needs to go down.
Right. Oh, yes. I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that just for a second, because that little jerk on your shoulder is not telling you facts, right? Like, we have to recognize that our thoughts are not facts, right? And that the train of thought, the internal dialogue that we have, is not the truth. However, if we decide my kid is a spoiled brat, our brain is really great of going in search of proving that to be true for you. And so then that's all you can see is my kid is a spoiled brat, right? And so my job is to help you lose those beliefs about your child, because your child is only ever just needing help, needing their needs met. And by needs, I mean connection and unconditional love and affection and appreciation. Not like I need that next toy, or I need this, upgrade on my Xbox or whatever it is. It's not that. They only ever really, truly need us. And so we have to be careful about those thoughts and that little asshole on your shoulder, who's not telling you the truth, because the last thing you want to do is believe that you're failing, because you're not, because now that's all you're going to see. Right. And when you label behavior, so I was always told I was selfish, right? And that's all you see. But from a child's perspective, they say, oh, I am selfish. And that leads often to disempowering beliefs about yourself. And so what happened to me is I was told I was selfish, and maybe I was, but I was a kid when, my dad decided I was selfish. And that's the lens with which he saw me, 100%. And then I became a people pleaser, because I didn't want anyone to think I was selfish. So I'll give you the shirt off my back because I'm not selfish. So it wasn't an accurate label at all. And it takes you away from curiosity, which is what all we're talking about here, is just being curious, finding out what's going on. takes you out of curiosity, compassion, seeing your child as just needing help, it completely defeats the purpose of what it is that you want to do and build that connection and you being that safe place for your kid.
I think that's kind of where we came in, about creating that safe place so that later on when your child is having a serious problem where there's an issue with an adult at school or at camp, or they're experiencing bullying, or they're starting to get a little close to gang stuff, or they're getting to that age when, let's not pretend our kids are not going to experiment with drugs, not experiment with inappropriate sex sometime between age 16 and 19. That's going to happen. And if they feel comfortable coming to us for advice, or at least coming to us if there's a problem, and so that they're not afraid of the consequences of us knowing, which we build that foundation from the very beginning.
And that leads me to something I haven't mentioned, but I really want to mention, when it comes to these big topics, right? Right now, in this moment, politics is really big. Wearing a mask, getting a vaccine is really big. As the parent, as the safe place, as the in-charge person who you are, the in-charge parent that you are, you want to be the place where they come to for the information, right? You don't want them to learn about stuff on the playground or from their friends or from the gang or whatever. You want to be the one to explain what's going on and be there for them if they ever have any questions, and be there for them to check in with them too, right? So when the pandemic first started, it was important for me as a mom, also, in the work that I do, for me to say, okay, we can't change the reality, but here's what we can do. We do have control. We can wash our hands, right? We can stay 6 feet apart. We can wear a mask, right? And then eventually get vaccinated. So, when there's all of this noise all over the place, you want to be the lighthouse for your kids to come to for the right information. When you have a leader of your country saying things that are inappropriate or maybe untrue anywhere in the world, and you want to say to your kids, listen, sometimes even adults don't know what they're talking about, or sometimes even adults don't always tell the truth. And this actually is this is the truth, right? So you just want to be that person to have the information that is true and is level-headed, to help them instead of them finding out in different ways. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple more questions real quick. And one of them is, so this is information that would be fantastic to have in the year that you're pregnant with your first child, right? That would be the best time to learn it. But say you're a parent who's got a 9-year-old and you've been doing some things that you've established patterns that you'd like to change, having been exposed to this information. What are some of the best ways to, what's the word we're using now in the middle of the pandemic, to pivot? What are some ways to build these new patterns in yourselves and your children, and also when you interact? Do you just change overnight? Do you have a family meeting? What's the best way to do that?
Okay, such a good question. And first it comes with the realization, like, okay, maybe I've gone off course a little bit. And the first thing I want everybody to understand is it's never too late. It's never too late. Never too late. Even working with people who have adult children, it's never too late. Okay, so you think 9 years old is too old. It's not. So the first thing you want to do, and I really say this all the time, is you've got to slow down, because parenting isn't an emergency. We are so fast to respond. We are so fast to react. We are so fast to judge, to interrupt, to, blow things out of proportion sometimes, that we just need to slow down, which allows us to put space between what's happening in front of us and our own feelings and our own reactions, right? So slow down for a second. And then you just want to be curious, like, okay, hold on, what's going on? What am I feeling right now? What must my child be feeling right now? And what must my child be needing, right? Just slow down for a second. Even if you can just slow down, that's going to make a huge difference, because you're going to be out of reactive into responsive, right? And then you can, when you slow down, you can choose your words, because when we are just like reacting, we are saying things that we don't mean. We're saying things we can't take back. So slow down. It's not an emergency unless there's blood or somebody's hurt, obviously. And most people act as though everyday parenting, everyday, like life in family every day is that way. And you don't have to. Like, just hang on for a sec and then get curious about what's going on. And don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. And then come to see me if you need some help, because I will help you with the side of you that is triggered right now, that is angry right now, that can't see your child is just needing help. And I'll help you to unravel your child's behavior and help you to understand and connect what they're really asking you for. The fact of the matter is that we all have blind spots, and sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. And how can we know better? How can we do better unless we know, right?
Yeah. So that brings up a technique I'm very curious about, because as a martial arts instructor, I often will say, tell a student, hey, I need you to relax. And then 90% of the time right after that, I have to say, stop getting tenser about how not relaxed you are. Right?
Yeah.
And I could see something happening where, so you're looking at your parenting situation, you are realizing you have blind spots, you don't, that there are things that you would like to change. And so you got the shoulder devil going, you suck, you're the worst parent ever, you're screwing this up. And then you start learning some techniques. And then you realize, and then you start trying to apply them. And because you never get a technique right on the first time, then the shoulder devil's going, you're screwing this up too, you loser. Yeah. So I'm sure you've encountered this with your clients and students.
And myself.
What do you do? What do you do?
You have to, this is the work. This is the work. You have to recognize, again, that is all bullshit. Those thoughts are not real. Those thoughts are not facts. And the work is to commit to, and so let me just tell you a little bit what I do. So you take that thought that isn't serving you, right? I walk parents through it. We have a way of letting it go. The thing is about that thought is it creates a neural pathway in your brain. So every time you feel that anger rising up in you, right, boom, you go to the part of your brain that is saying, your kid's going to be a loser, you're a bad parent, all this stuff, right? And then you react from that place. But because we have neuroplasticity, our brains can grow and change anytime, which is why it's never too late, right? So we're lucky that we have that. So what we do then is we replace that old thought with something new, something that says, so here's what I used to say about my son. I used to say, you ruin everything, right? And for all intents and purposes, he did. Every time we went anywhere, it was a big fuss. Every time we did anything, he refused to do it, whatever, every time. And all I could see was how he was ruining everything. I couldn't see anything else. But I changed my belief about the situation to put myself back into control. And I changed it to, we can work this out. Whatever you throw at me, I've got it, right? So anytime another thought came through, nope, we can work it out. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating a new neural pathway, and our brains are use dependent. So as soon as you stop using this, it's going to die away, right? It's not going to be used anymore. And instead, your default is going to go to the new neural pathway that's in your brain that says we can work it out, right? I still use it to this day, still. Because he still is very resistant. My child has oppositional defiance, right? Along with OCD, along with, and that comes with explosive anger, along with ADHD. So there's a lot. When he doesn't want to do something, he talks and talks and talks about it, right? And it's a lot, right? But we can work it out. We can work it out. So that's the work, right? And you have to be committed to it. You're not going to get a six-pack if you just do a couple of sit-ups here or there. You've got to commit to the work. And there has to be an anchor for you for why you're doing this, right? Like, what is your why? For me, I couldn't live another minute being this miserable, this depressed, and feeling like I was the worst mom in the entire world, right? Because that asshole was pretty powerful, on my shoulder. I couldn't live that way. I couldn't cry myself to sleep anymore. I just couldn't, because I thought maybe I should just leave my family or maybe leave this earth. That is how bad it was for me. And so that's my why. That's my anchor that anchors me to this. And still every day I have to wake up and commit. Like, I am going to honor my kids just for who they are. I'm going to meet them exactly where they are, not where I think they should be. And that can be hard some days when you have a child with the same child I talk about with learning disabilities too. He's not where a lot of other kids are. And if I was to compare him and judge him, it would just devastate him and me. And I would stop seeing him as someone who's just trying, and will evolve at his own pace, right? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. So I got one more question, but before I get there, tell us a little more about your brand new awesome website and what's going on there, because it's really cool.
It's really cool. And you have something in there too. So what I have is, Parenting Our Future is my podcast, which you can get on any podcast platform. And I have a companion site to the toolbox, which is, it's called sorry, I said that wrong. It's a companion site to the podcast. It's called the Parent Toolbox. So within it, it's just www.parent-toolbox.com. So super easy to remember. And it's a membership. And it's a membership because that's just the way I had to set it up through the platform that I use. But when you're a member, you get free parenting tools every week. And you have access to a library of free parenting tools, which will help you through what to do in the case of a meltdown, how to get your kids to listen the first time, 101 coping skills for your kids, plus collections on supporting your LGBTQ child, and also, how to parent with a spouse or an ex. What if you're, as an entrepreneur myself, and formerly, had a corporate career in marketing, I've got a section for sort of boss moms, right? And just challenging behavior. So there's so much information on there, and it's all free because I want parents to know what to do and how to do it and be supported and feel supported. Because what I believe is, if you want to change the world, you've got to start with your parenting. So I want to give you everything that you need to get there.
Let's get up. That should be a bumper sticker. Please tell me you have bumper stickers that say, if you want to change the world, start with your parenting.
I'm going to start. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? I was talking with my social media manager, and we're like, oh, she's like, that needs to be everywhere. That needs to be everywhere. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay. Bumper stickers coming. I'll send a bunch to you.
Excellent. All right. So one last question. That said, there's a transition period as a parent, right? Where when your kid's born, you're an authority. You're the authority over that child. And that's the relationship. And then when they're adults, you no longer have any authority at all, but hopefully you have influence. And somewhere in the middle of that, in the teenage years, early 20s, you're in that tricky space where using authority is not appropriate. And this is mostly the parents' problem, not the kids' problem, about transitioning from being an authority to being an influencer. And what advice do you have for that extremely tricky and stressful thing? Because unfortunately, it's also when your kid starts leaving the house and doing other stuff that could get them killed.
I know.
So what do we do?
So I'm living that right now, and it is a delicate age. And so I see it a little bit differently. I say we go from teaching to mentoring, not so much authority
Nice.
to whatever, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, really, truly, because I just really believe that that's all we're doing when they're little is we're just right, just teach it over and over. And sometimes we have to repeat the lesson over and over again, and it drives us crazy, right? But that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So we go from teaching to mentoring, which means that we give them some space. And we often misunderstand what the teen years are all about. And what they're about is, first of all, there is a massive pruning in the brain that's happening. There's tons of stuff happening brain-wise, which is more about their behavior than their hormones are. But hormones come into play too, and that's huge. It's confusing time for them. They have the body of a man or a woman, but the intellect of a child. You know, sometimes they look like a man or like a full-grown man or woman, but they don't act like it, right? So it's confusing. And so what we need to do is we need to be a container for their angst, for them, to really be there for them how they need us to be there. If nothing else, to be to listen to them, to understand them, to ask if it's okay to give them advice, right? They don't always want it. And the whole point of the teen years is, like you just said, is for them to grow up and away from us. That's the whole point of it. So they're going to push us away, and they're going to say, Mom, I need a hug, but don't touch me, right? They're going to say, listen to me, but don't you dare say a word, right? They're going to break your heart. They're going to break your heart over and over again. You know, this morning I went to give my son a lovey, and he's like, don't kiss me on my skin, because I'm like, I love you to kiss, like I'm all about it. And so I had to kiss him on the top of his head. You know, all I want to do is just like take him in my arms, but he's the same size as me. That's weird. So, you know, I'm still me, but it's respecting that they need to grow up and away from us. The other thing that we get in trouble with is we have a dream for our kids. We see all of the good things and all the bad things. And we have a dream for what their future is going to look like. And what that translates into is an agenda that we run for our kids. Like, I think you are going to play in the NBA. So you better, here's your trainer, here's your, you know, I don't know. You know what, I should have just said hockey, because I didn't want to be a stereotype, but that's exactly what I wanted. That's the only comparison that I can draw, right? But you know what I mean, right? Like, or I want to play piano, I think you're going to be a really great piano player, whatever. We run our own agenda, and we don't actually ask them if it's okay. We don't actually check in with them. Don't want that. You're going to go to business school. You have to go to the best business school, you know, and then they start to reject us, and they start to withdraw from us. And soon, if we keep focused on the thing that we want for them, they'll reject it all together. Right. So we've got to be really careful, really stealthy, you know, and just not stealthy. I don't want to say we manipulate. We just have to listen. And you've got to let go of what you want, because it's their life, not yours. You are no longer invited to make decisions for your child. You are just there to be their safe place if they need you and if they want you. And that will continue on until their adult years. How many people do you know who have parents who are grown-ass adults, who have parents, who have in-laws that still want to control them, right? You are no longer invited to parent me. You know, I said that to my dad once. I just said, Dad, stop it. You don't get to tell me who's a good friend for me. I have a mortgage. I have a career. I have 2 kids. I have a husband. Like, no. Don't tell me what I can and can't do. Like, no, right? We'll reject it all out. So that's what you got to do. You got to respect that they're on their own path, and you just need to be there when they fall. And it's okay for them to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, but that's how they learn.
A friend of mine uses a term that teens live by Braille. They just bump into stuff like a Roomba.
Yeah. But you know what? Part of what's going on with them is, and I know it sounds, you know, like, of course, But it's not just with drugs and alcohol, like and sex and other things, but experimentation is part of this period of time. So that means they may, oh my gosh, we saw our neighbor's kid who's 18 had a party last weekend. And we were looking out of our bedroom window to see what they were doing. They were standing on a railing that was like doing this, and they were jumping into a bunch of kids that were catching them. So like crowd surfing. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so typical teenager. Like they could have hurt themselves 100 million different ways. And I was like, okay, someone's gonna die, right? So we told the mom that was there overseeing the party, but like that's just part of that brain. They don't, and again, they don't have a fully grown brain either, right? But that experimenting, that risk-taking behavior is very normal and natural. And unfortunately,
they're going to experiment.
Get them hurt.
They're going to experiment with procrastination, with their schoolwork. They're going to experiment with all manner of things. And one of the things I think is especially challenging is they're also going to experiment with how they talk to their parents. They're going to see if that fuck you is going to fly. Yeah. And I think one of the things that through line of this whole conversation is that if we respond that way, we respond to that and get up and angry about it, they're going to learn something. Where if we respond with, hey, what's going on here, man? Yeah. You never said that to me before. I've never said that to you. What's really going on here, buddy? Yeah. Well, and in fact, if I can go back to that situation with my son this week, I mean, he's the gift. I always say he's my biggest gift, right? And he's the gift that keeps on giving. Like a fruitcake. Sometimes I don't want any more gifts. But, afterwards, and I had to rush a little bit through it because I had a call with a client right away. And so I was a little rattled and I needed a minute to calm myself down. But what I said to him afterwards, after we were calm, and, he apologized. He doesn't want to be that way. Just like you said, the punishment isn't feeling bad, right? He knows that I am his biggest supporter, his biggest cheerleader, his safest place. He knows that I am. And I said to him, but listen, you don't get to talk to me that way. That is not how you talk to your parents. And you can't talk to anybody that way because nobody will respect you if you are that disrespectful. Right? This is not okay. And she's like, yeah, I know. And while I was on my call, the doors of my office are glass, right? They're windows. And he did a little one of these at the window. Aww. So, I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like all of this is worth it. Like if I had to sit through all of that to get one of these from my 16-year-old, like it's worth it. Totally worth it. Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Robbin. I'm sure our viewers are going to get a lot of good work out of this. And I'll make sure that your links are in the show notes for anybody who wants to check out Parenting Toolbox. And yes, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Jason. And thanks for the work you're doing. You're amazing. Oh, you're too kind.